friends. If you are getting ready to start watching videos on how to paint Death Guard, this is me in progress in the future. I should have made this at the beginning. This video is going to be really quick, and it's going to be a breakdown of the different paints and tools I'm using. I've tried to include a list of all the paints in the descriptions, but I figured this will be useful. So, first things first. These are the green paints that we're going to be using for the armor panels. It's the olive green color spectrum for the Fanatics, Warpaints Fanatics for Army Painter. We're primarily using these two, and then just a little bit of these two for highlights later when we're kind of mixing things around. But yeah, so those are for the armor panels. For any of the fleshy bits and the Nurglings, we are base coating them in Moldy wine. We are doing elderflower for the kind of subtle highlights, and then Figgy pink for some of the highest highlights for those. And then for these ones, let me try to rotate these a little bit easier. There we go. So for these ochres, for Tundra, Taupe, Prairie Ochre, Wasteland Clay, and Barren Dunes, basically we're using these two primarily for base coating the bones, capes, parchment, and I think that's about it for this, and the wraps on some of the staffs or weapons. And then we use these for the highlights for those, and we don't use a ton of these again, but they are present, so I'm just kind of making note of that for everyone. And then for the metallics, these are the metallics we're using. We're using true copper for the copper bits. We're using gunmetal, and we're going to use mithril and the later steps to do some edge highlighting. And then for shades, primarily, we're using these two. Early on, we also experiment in the video using contrast Plaguebearer Flesh. And we will use this again for something different. For the magic on this character, the sorcerer, I experimented with using these color shift paints, and they're lovely paints, but I'm going to end up painting over these, and we're going to use Plaguebearer Flesh in a future video to make it just look more like a traditional Nurgle kind of smoke. The military shade is a great shade for over the armor panels for the green bits. And then sepia tone is going to be a wash that we use across nearly the entire model and the Nurglings and the little fleshy bits. And then additional paints we use, we've got Disgusting Slime Effect Paint. We use this primarily for just a couple of the models. For the guy with the plague spewer, or whatever this weapon is called, we do it for some of the little gross effects on that weapon, for some of the goo coming out there. But that's about it. We use it on a couple other small places, but most models don't actually have a lot of that. And then Dark Rust we're applying to nearly all the metal surfaces on the model, just to kind of grime it up a little bit. And then we use verdigris around areas where the water is going to pool, like around rivets in some of the recesses. And we, get a little heavy-handed with it in places, but I think it adds a nice texture to the models. Lastly, I experimented with this Turbo Dork color shift paint, Galaxia. I really love the way this looks, and I was intending to use it to kind of represent warp magic for our little sorcerer guy here. However, I don't like the vibe of this, so I'm going to be painting over that in the course of the videos. But just as a heads up, if you're starting now, like, not to besmirch these paints, they're lovely, but I just I don't think I'm going to use it for this particular project. But you will see it being used. Other things of note, I do use Vallejo black as the base color for these models at the very beginning. There's no particular reason for this. I've had this bottle for over 10 years, and I'm trying to use it up. Any black will do, literally. Other things worth noting. For some of the later steps, I use a Liquitex acrylic ink. I use this to dot in some of the eyes, and I also use it to prep the plasma gun, where we're going to try to do kind of a plasma glow effect on them. And the acrylic ink is really good for that. Speaking of the glow, I'm also going to be using this fluorescent lime paint from Green Stuff World. I think I'm going to probably use this for a bunch of the eyes for the Death Guard that have little eye lenses that we've applied that acrylic ink to. We also have Turbo Dork, another color shift paint, the Afterburner. I'm going to use this for the tip of the plasma gun to try to represent like that heat coming off of it. We're just kind of experimenting with this, and we'll see how it goes. At the time of filming, I have not finished. Other tools that are useful. I use the Master's Brush Cleaner. I have literally used this for decades. It's really good for cleaning your brushes and kind of helping sustain them and keep the life of the brushes going, even if you're a little rough on them, which I tend to be. And also, just as another side note, I do use Green Stuff World's brush repair gel. Similar kind of thing. It just kind of helps keep your brushes going longer. Really important for just trying to save money and not waste money by letting your brushes get destroyed easily. Now, coming to the brushes I use. Most of the brushes I use are intensely cheap brushes. I use this series of Golden Maple brushes. It came from a pack, I believe, that had like 8 or 10 brushes. They are incredibly cheap. I believe it was like $10 for a pack of 8. And honestly, they've been pretty good for the price point, and I like the way that they feel in my hand. They do fall apart almost immediately. But that being said, I've still managed to make them work for me. And I used quite a few of these during the course of the video. Another value set, I got these ones. I don't even know what brand they are. I'm pretty sure I got these from like Michael's for like, $8 in a pack of, 12 or whatever. These I primarily use for dry brushing or base coating. Just because I don't really care if these get handled a little rough, just because they are incredibly cheap. I still try to take care of them, but mainly I use these for dry brushing and base coating. These are a little bit better. I got these, I think, off of Amazon before I stopped shopping with Amazon. This was in another value pack of, I believe, like 8 or 10 brushes, and it was, I think, maybe $12. These ones have been a little bit better. The tips have actually kind of kept a lot better. I use some of these for when I'm doing a little bit more precise work, even though the brush is a little bit larger in size, just because it does have such a nice tip. And surprisingly, these are some of the nicer brushes I use. I don't like to be negative about stuff, but I do use this brush during the painting. And in one of the videos, you actually see this brush start falling apart as I use it. And it's kind of sad because I bought this brand new while painting these miniatures, and I started losing brush hairs almost immediately. So I would say, buyer beware for this particular variety of brush. Just, I hate to say that, but it started falling apart like literally in the first 2 sessions of using it. So just, as a heads up. And these little guys, these are fun. So I bought a Green Stuff World starter box for painting, and they just has a lot of generic brushes, and it comes with a lot of these, like what they call disposable brushes. And really, you can get a lot of use out of one of these little paint brushes, and you'll see me use these in some of the later videos for a little bit more precise work. They are cheap, and they are meant to be disposable, and you can see that like the brush hairs are not really they're not really in there very well. But it's okay, because like what you're using this for is like, I'm using this to dot eyes, I'm using this for small details. But that being said, even though they are disposable, I am going to try to make it last as long as I can. But the second that this starts like going south, like I probably will just pitch it. And then in terms of nice brushes, I have a few that I use. That's probably a terrible noise on the mic. This is just the rest of the brushes from the Green Stuff World kit. As you can see, I haven't broken into these. And that's just because I do try to use the stuff I have out, and I like to try to keep things nice. And so, like, even though this is a really cheap brush, it still has a good tip. And so I do a lot of my precision work actually with this kind of cheap generic brush, which is just my way of saying I think that while really expensive brushes are nice and they can like make a huge difference, sometimes it's okay to just, if you're getting started, go ahead and get some of those cheap brushes that come in like a set of 10 or something, because some of those are actually quite nice, and if you're kind to your brush, you can make it last a long time. Like, I've used these for probably like 8 years or something, which is crazy, but it's still going. And yeah, and just for the painting supplies, that's basically it. I have the only other painting supply I mention or will mention is I just have a really cheap little metal palette. You could use a wet palette; those are fine. I I don't particularly like using wet palettes. Like, they have lots of advantages. I'm not saying that they're bad. I just, it's not a thing I enjoy using. And then for paper towels, I actually like using shop towels because they're really absorbent and they last a lot longer. And so basically, I just keep folding my shop towel over and over again until it's too gross to keep using, and then I throw it away. But basically, for painting, I kind of like that because I feel like a normal paper towel just doesn't last very long, and then you end up blowing through a roll of paper towels super fast, and that's not good for anyone. Anyway, so that's the supplies I'm using for this particular painting project. And if you're going to paint along, then if you want to use those, that's great. If not, that's okay too. I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what I'm using. So yeah, that's it. That's all of the materials that I'm using for this particular project, just in case you want to use the same materials as you paint along. And if you don't, that's okay too. Either way, be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and just have fun doing your hobby. All right, bye now.